This is a walkthrough of the Excel regression effect exercise. To start with, you should duplicate what you see here or in the document available on Moodle. You don't want the numbers. Some of those numbers are calculated numbers. Most of them are calculated numbers. But you want this if you are interested in how you get cells, the text in the cell centered and sort of stacked on top of each other. If you select those cells like I've done down here and go up to Format, this is in the upper Excel menu, and then Cells, and then Alignment, you want Wrap Text, and that will wrap text with the default setting of left aligned. You can then go up in here. This is under Home, and you can center that. So this is our starting point. So with the regression effect, what we want to demonstrate in this exercise is that if you go and categorize results based upon a value which has a random element to it, subsequent results will tend to move towards the mean or median value. So we'll come back to that once we get started on this. So we have this set up, and what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be simulating a 20-question multiple choice test. And the first test, the individuals are going to then be categorized as either remedial students, normal students, or gifted students. And then we're going to retest them with a second test, again with 20 multiple choice questions. And then we're going to see how these different groups perform on test 1 versus test 2. Okay? And to start with, we need a range for the knowledge, skills, and ability, or KSA. And so cells C6 and C7, we'll enter some numbers here and we can change these. So the numbers that we enter in here depend upon both the how good the test is, as well as the range of the student's actual KSAs. Okay, so if you have a really good test, does a good job at determining what a student's true KSA is. You have a group of students with a wide range of actual abilities. You might have a lower bound of 0 and an upper bound of 20, and that 20 basically just reflects that we have a 20-question test. So this would be an example where the test is good at picking out true ability or true KSA, and the students have a wide range. If all the students are basically identical and the test is sort of a bad test, you might have a range that's like maybe the lower bound is 9 and the upper bound is 11. Okay, so this might be where students all know the stuff, but the test is kind of bad. Okay, or you might have a situation where there either is a wide range of true abilities, but the test is just super simple, and it's not necessarily testing those, but it's testing stuff that is actually real easy, in which case you might have, say, a lower bound of, say, 18 and upper bound of 20. Okay, so we're going to use this. You're going to use this at the very end and put in different numbers to sort of see how this affects the regression effect. To start with, however, we're going to start with the lower bound of 5 and an upper bound of 15. This is sort of like a middle ground scenario. Okay. So we have that put in. We want to have, we're going to have 100 students. So you can either go 1, 2, and then select that, and then, go to the bottom right and drag that down. You can do that, or you can go up here to the upper Excel menu, do Edit, Fill, Series. This is in a column, and step value is 1, and stop value is 100. Okay. So there we have 1 through 100 for the number of students that we have. Okay, now in cell C13, so we're going to go in here. So answers known with certainty. And so we're going to type in, we'll enter this in, then sort of explain what this does. Equals rand between, and you notice here that once I start typing this, so long as I don't make a spelling error, it actually shows that there actually is a function called rand between, left parentheses, bottom and top. And this will generate a number between what you get for the bottom and what you get for the top. So for the bottom, that's going to be this lower bound. And to freeze this in place, we're going to, because we want to copy this formula down, we're going to put a $sign in front of the 6. That way when we copy it down, that 6 stays as a 6, doesn't change to a 7 or an 8. And then the upper bound is C7, and again you want a $sign in front of that 7. So we have that. So for example, this this first student has, they know 8 questions with certainty. Okay, and again, this is sort of factoring in whether the test is a good test. I mean, if the test is written in Russian and none of the students speak Russian, then this would be a low number. And we can copy that down. You just go to lower right corner, that's all a +sign and a double left click, and it'll copy down here. And you notice here every time it recalculates, the numbers change. Okay. So we have that, and then material being guessed. So student number 1 here, for example, I have 14 in here. So they know 14 of the questions with certainty, and they're going to guess on the remaining questions. So this is going to be equals 20. There's 20 questions on the test. They know 14 of those, and so they're guessing on the other ones. And again, I pressed enter. The numbers changed, but it makes sense here. They know 12 questions now. They're guessing on 8. And we can do the same thing and copy that down. Okay, so they're guessing 10 of the questions, and then in cell E13, we need to determine the student's score on the guessed questions. Okay, so student 1 here is guessing on 10 questions. How many of those are they going to get right? Okay, and so to do that, we're going to do equals binom dot inv. Now the inv stands for inverse, so we're not looking for a probability. We're going to instead give Excel a probability, and then it's going to determine whether that means they got the question, how many of the questions they got correct. Okay, so we have that, and then D13, that's the number of questions that they're guessing on. And then we're going to assume that there are 4 questions on the test, so they have a 25% chance of getting a question correct. Okay, and in practice, a student might be able to sort of weed out 1 question or 2 questions. If they could weed out 1 question, then maybe they got a 1 in 3 chance of getting a question correct. Or if they can eliminate 2 of the questions, they have a 50% chance. We're just going to assume that if they guess, they just guess. Okay, so that probability is 0.25. And then the random number, so rand, left parentheses, right parentheses. And so what that does is it generates a random number between 0 and 1. So what this is going to return, this is going to return a number between 0 and 10 based upon that there's 10 questions and they have a 25% chance of getting each question correct. Okay, and then we want another right parentheses here. So we do that. And you see here, as we have the first student here, they know 5 questions, and your numbers are probably be different. They know 5 questions with certainty. They guess on 15, and of those 15, they get 6 correct. Okay? And we can copy this formula down. Again, just double left click once you have that solid plus sign. And in F13, we're going to enter the same formula. And one way to do this, we can just come up here, just highlight, go to the formula bar, highlight this, and then come in here, go up to the formula bar and paste that. So notice here when I paste, if I'm up here in the formula bar, it tells me what I'm referencing. Okay, so I'm still referencing the number of guessed questions. You could do that. Another thing you could have done is you could over here, we want to be able to copy this formula across. The only cell reference here is D13. We want to keep that on D13. So if we had put a $sign there, we could then copy that across. And notice here that if we copy that across, it's still referencing D13. As opposed to, we went down here and left that as D14 without a $sign. If we copy that across, we instead get it referencing column E, and we don't want that. Okay, so that's something to watch out for. Okay, so $signs make a difference here. So we have this with that $sign in there, and just copy that down. Okay, now we have in G13, we want the total on test 1, so that is comprised of the questions or answers known with certainty plus the score they get on the guessed questions. And then same thing here with test 2. They guess 7. They know 7 with certainty, and they guessed and got 5 of those correct. Okay, so we have those 2, and we can select both those. Lower right corner, double left click, and it'll copy that down. Okay, so now what we want to do is we need to come up here, and for test number 1, we want to take the results from test number 1 and assign students to different groups based upon how they did in test number 1. And so what we want up here is we want the 25th percentile for test 1 and the 75th percentile for test number 1. So those that are in, say, the top 25%, we want to say those are gifted students. Students in the bottom 25%, we want to say those are remedial students. And the 50% that are in between, those are going to be normal students. And so what we're going to do, this is step number 12 in the directions. We're going to type here in G9 equals percentile, and then we're going to, you can come down here and select G13, Shift Command on a Mac, down arrow selects that range, and then comma, and we want the 25th percentile, so 0.25, right parentheses, and enter. And so we see here that for test number 1, the 25th percentile is a score of 10. And we're going to, if we go up here to the formula bar, copy that, come down here to G10, go to the formula bar and just paste that in and change that 0.25 to 0.75. So that's the 75th percentile. Okay, so we have those two numbers that we're going to be used over here in column I to assign students to one of 3 groups based upon their test 1 result. In I13, we have this long formula and if statement. So equals if, and so the first thing we're going to check is if G13, so that's their test 1 result, is less than G9, and we want to put a $sign on the 9. So if it's less than G9, we want it to come back with remedial, and we're going to put remedial in double quotations, and be sure that you spell remedial correctly. Okay? Spelling errors will mess you up here. Comma, so if it is less than the value in G9, it's going to come back with remedial. If it's not less than the value in G9, we have another if statement. So if G13 is greater than the value in G10, and we're going to put a $sign on G10, it's going to come back with gifted. And gifted is in double quotations and then comma. So if that's true, it's going to come back with gifted. If neither of these are true, so they're neither remedial nor gifted, then it's going to come back with normal. And that's again in double quotations. And then we want a right parentheses that closes the second if statement, and then another right parentheses closes the first if statement. Okay, so we see here this student, as it's set up, they scored a 13, and that's between 10 and 15, so that comes back as normal. And then we can double click and copy that down. Now, if you are getting errors here, well, you're probably actually not likely to get errors here, but you might check and make sure that normal, remedial are spelled correctly. You also want to make sure you don't have any extra spaces here. Another thing while we're at it, up here you have remedial, you have normal, you have gifted. Make sure that these are spelled correctly, and make sure that you don't have any extra spaces. So like here, remedial. If I put a space after remedial, that will matter. You don't want a space after the remedial. Okay? And I'll hopefully, if I remember, I'll come back and show you what happens if you did put a space there. But that is probably the most common error that I see, is that there's an extra space after one of these three words: remedial, normal, or gifted. So, time to summarize our results. This is step 15. In cell G4, so right here, we're going to type a formula. It's an average if formula. So average if. So this is going to average numbers in a range if some condition is met. So if, and we want to reference, so average here, it says range, criteria, and average range. Okay. So this first range is asking, okay, what range are we going to be comparing to the criteria? Okay. And then what is the criteria? And that's going to just be that it's remedial, that it's a remedial group. And then average range. What range do we average if that is actually met? Okay. So the range is going to be this I13 down to I112, comma, and we want to put dollar signs on this 13 and on this 112. Okay, and then comma, and then dollar sign F4. So a dollar sign on the F but not on the 4, comma, and we want to average what we see in G. So here I'm actually at the bottom down here, so we can select the bottom of that. So that's G12, Shift Command up arrow, and then just use the arrow to select the right range. And we've got, there we go. and we want to put dollar signs on that. So dollar sign on the 13, dollar sign on the 112, and that should do it. So right parentheses and enter. And we see here, so the remedial group, their average score on the first test was 8.25. Your numbers may differ slightly. We're then going to copy this down. So copy this down through the gifted, okay, not to the overall. So we have here average, and just make sure this is making sense. So remedial should have a lower average than normal, which should have a lower average than gifted. We click here up in the formula bar, we can see that it's still correctly referencing the right range down below, and it's referencing the gifted. Now, if you had made a spelling error, if you had included, say, a space after gifted, you would get something like that. Okay, you would get that type of error. So if you get that type of error, go and look for that extra space. Okay? Okay, so we have that. Okay, one other fix here so that we can copy this over. Go back up here to G4 and edit this and put a dollar sign in front of the I. So it's referencing that first range where it's looking at the criteria. Put dollar signs in front of that. Do not put dollar signs in front of the G, and don't mess with the dollar sign F4. So do that, and then we'll copy that down through gifted, and now we can copy that over just to make sure this is working correctly. We can click on that and see that it's referencing the correct range, and now it's referencing the total test score for test 2. Okay, so we have that, and then in G7 we want the overall average, so this is just equals average, and for test 1, just like that, down arrow, right parentheses, and so this is the overall average, and just copy that over to the right. Okay, so you can see here the overall test scores were about the same for the 2 tests. Okay. And now we want to look at the percent change. So this is going to give us an idea of the magnitude of the regression effect. Okay. Okay, so in cell I4, we're going to enter equals H4 divided by G4. H4 divided by G4 minus 1. And we can format that as a percentage change. So there's like a 10.5% increase there, and then we can copy this down all the way down and include the overall. Okay, so this tells us how much a group improved or got worse on the subsequent test. Okay, so this is one trial. This is the result of one trial, and we want to actually do 100 Monte Carlo trials to sort of see what the average of these numbers is. So what we want to do is we want to keep track of these percentage changes and get the average from 100 trials. So to do that, we're now on step 18. In cell K13, we're going to enter the numbers 1 through 100. So start off with the 1, edit, fill, series, column, and stop value is 100. And so that goes down that way. And then in L11, let's see, so L11, this is going to be, we just want to enter remedial. Normal, gifted, and overall. Okay, and then in L12, so here we're going to be doing a data table, and we need to tell Excel what to keep track of. Okay, so we want to keep track of the percentage change for the remedial group. So in L12, we're going to do equals I4. In M12, we want equals I5. And in N12, we want equals I6. And finally, in cell O12, we want equals I7. So we want it to keep track of those values. Okay? And now, to enter the to create a data table, let's start here on K12, and I'm holding the Shift key and Command key down, do a right arrow twice to get over here, and then a down arrow twice. So now we've selected this range, and this is where we want to put our data table. Now we're down on the lower Excel menu here, we click on Data, go over here to What If Analysis, and we say Data Table. And here, so for the row input cell, you leave that blank. Column input cell, you can give it you can give it K12. That'd be fine. You just want a blank cell for this particular one, and press OK. And it may take a minute to calculate. There we go. We've got values down there. There we go. Okay, so just give it a while to calculate. And there it is. Okay, now we're going to summarize these results. So in cell J4 up here, we want to summarize our results. So average from 100 Monte Carlo trials for the remedial students is equals, let me just do average L13 down through L112. And for J5, you can do the same thing, but reference what you have over in column M, or if you are a bit sneaky, you can actually copy that to the right. So if we copy that to the right, we see that it's actually referencing the right area. And then you can just move that where you want it. So let's do that. Let's do that a couple times. So plus sign, copy that over to the right, and move it where we want it. And copy this one over to the right, and move it where we want it. And just as a check here, that's giving us the average for the overall. Okay, and as a check that what you've done is correct, this last one, the overall percentage change, the average from the 100 Monte Carlo trials should be 0. Okay, we have a multiple choice test where the parameters are the same, they're guessing the same amount, and so you'd expect the test 1 results to average out to be about the same as the test 2 results. The differences are that you see if you're in the remedial group, those that are in the remedial group may be there because they just got unlucky at guessing, okay, on the first test. That bad luck doesn't transfer over to the second test. So on the second test, they're going to perform sort of average on the guessing compared to the whole group. And so they would tend to do better on average. And so you see that their scores actually improve. The normal group, that's that middle 50%. You wouldn't expect that much change in the normal group. And then the gifted group, they may be gifted because they got lucky on the guessing. Okay, so that's going to depend upon how many questions were actually guessed. So if there's a lot of questions being guessed, the gifted students on the second test, you might expect them to do worse. And you see here, there is a decline there. It's not as large of a decline as the improvement in the remedial scores here. Okay, so that's the basic setup here. At the end of the exercise, you're asked to look at 4 different scenarios. One scenario is lower bound of 5, upper bound of 6. So that's where there's a lot of guessing taking place. Second scenario is a lower bound of 0 and an upper bound of 20. So that would be one where there's some students that really know the stuff. They're not guessing on any questions. And other students are guessing on quite a few of the questions. Scenario C, lower bound of 15, upper bound of 16. So you might sort of think, everybody's sort of the same. They're guessing on 5 or 6 questions, or 4 or 5 questions each. So you can sort of think of there's just 4 or 5 bad questions on there. Otherwise, everybody knows the answers, and so performance depends upon how well they do at guessing on those 4 or 5 questions. And then D is very similar to that, except the test is worse. So now they're guessing on 10 to 11 questions as opposed to 4 to 5 questions. So you can play around with plugging different values in here, and don't forget to answer the questions at the end where it's referring to those different scenarios. Okay, scenario A, B, C, or D as to which ones have a largest regression effect, or the test is good, or the test is bad. Be sure to answer those questions, and you can answer those questions on your Excel file, maybe up here starting in like L4. You can just answer the questions right there. Just number them. I think there's 3 questions, so you can just number them 1, 2, and 3, and then just say which scenario you think it applies to. And then don't forget to save your file, and then upload it to Moodle. And again, if you're getting an error on what you're doing, so for example, if you're seeing something like this, okay, so you see here, normal is coming up with all these div 0 exclamation marks. That's because you have an error here, either here, so here we have an extra space after normal, or you have this spelled correctly, but down here, you've maybe, suppose you dropped the O in normal, so you had something like this, and so I suppose that was all done this way. You get the same result here. That's spelled correctly. There's no extra space. But if you look down here, people are normal. They're not normal. Okay, so let's undo that. So spelling correctly matters. All right. Hope that helps.